Hi, I'm Catherine Rose, and I'm a geologist and an assistant professor in the School of Natural Sciences at Trinity College, Dublin. And my research involves studying information encoded in rocks to understand the evolution of Earth. And I'm interested in understanding key Earth history events such as mass extinctions, glaciations, the breaking up of continents, the building of mountains, and changes in ocean chemistry and atmospheric chemistry through time. And I'm particularly drawn to a fascinating period of Earth's history called the Near-Proterozoic. And this time period occurred around 1 billion years ago and lasted to around 500 million years ago. And this period of time is so fascinating because it represents an increased oxygenation of Earth's atmosphere. It's just before the dawn of complex animal life. And glaciations may have been so severe that the entire Earth was encapsulated by a kilometre-thick carapace of ice that lasted for millions of years. And so to help unravel information about these sorts of events, my research pairs two types of information. The first is that I make original field observations at a range of different scales using maps, rock outcrops, and thin sections. And the most interesting rocks that I study are precipitated sedimentary rocks called carbonates, an example being limestone. And these outcrops often contain physical evidence for processes such as waves, winds, and currents. And so by examining these and other different sedimentary structures, we can answer questions about what type of environment occurred at a particular place at a particular time. We can infer things such as water depth. Was it a beach environment? Was it a deep marine setting? Were conditions stormy or windy at the time? And what kind of life inhabited these sorts of environments? And so in the field, geologists march up mountains and collect progressively younger and younger carbonate samples as they head up towards the summit. And we can make observations at a kilometre scale about sedimentary basins and how those observations change through time. And we can also look at carbonates not just on a large scale, on a mountain scale, but also looking at carbonates in a microscopic detail. So my work takes me from large scale mapping projects to microscopic examination of thin sections to understand the origin of rocks. And this mapping is paired with the second type of information that I look at, and that's the chemistry of the rocks. And so carbonate rocks contain all kinds of chemical information. But to understand this, you actually have to extract it from the rock. And so to do that, geochemists typically take these carbonate rocks and dissolve them in acid. So this can reveal all kinds of useful information. The carbon in carbonates can tell us about aspects of the ancient carbon cycle, ranging from carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to how much organic carbon was being buried in sediments. The oxygen in carbonates can sometimes reveal information about the temperature at which that carbonate was precipitated, and other elements that are trapped within carbonate, such as sulfur, may be able to tell us information that can relate to levels of oxygen present in the atmosphere at the time. So we can use instruments like this isotope ratio mass spectrometer to make precise measurements of elemental and isotopic ratios that unlock the chemical information from carbonates. But these approaches aren't so simple because carbonates are actually really complicated rocks. At a small scale, this carbonate is composed of a huge range of different materials: cement, different types of mud, fossil fragments, different types of grain. And each of these could hold partitioned chemical information. But when we dissolve the rock as a whole rock in acid, we just average everything together and could lose any detailed information that it contains. And so some of my most recent work involves using cutting-edge techniques to decipher this micron scale, small scale geochemical variability. Using some of the world's brightest X-ray beams at a facility called a synchrotron, we can map out the complex variations in a rock at a micron scale. And so we can measure the concentrations of different elements amongst different parts of the carbonates. Here we have different sulfate concentrations that are represented by different colors. Does the variability matter? Yes, hugely, because we can see that sulfate concentrations are different amongst different grains. And so this variability exerts a strong influence on how we interpret the chemostratigraphic record that we're generating. And so by mapping out large-scale variability across basins and landscapes using maps, as well as the mapping detailed chemical compositions across thin sections on a very small scale, my work tries to understand the evolution of the Earth over its 4.5 billion years history by decoding these carbon